Welcome to these crash course projects where we're going to put together everything we've learned so far into real world projects. These ones right here that you actually have access to. I'm including this project file that you can open up and you can see exactly what's going on. I'm going to rebuild them throughout this project, but you can see the original ones here. We'll be using the resources that we used in the crash course for these projects. And I've also included the project inspiration final PNG files, which will be easy to use as reference, as you'll see coming up. And with each of these projects we're doing, there's going to be things that are new from the crash course. So not only are we going to put things together, all the tools and techniques, but also learn some new things. So starting off, we're going to create this project. And to start a new project while in Photoshop, I'm going to go up to File, New, and then I'm just going to create a custom one that is 1500 by 1500 pixels. I'm going to place a couple images, this meditating one image, and then also this clouds image. Now you'll notice that I can't place this clouds image until I actually commit and place this meditating image by pressing the return key, and it puts it down in our layer panel. And now same thing, we're going to put this clouds, but for this one I'm actually going to resize it and put it right about there, putting it beneath our meditating one. I'm going to go ahead and delete this background layer, and I'm also going to bring in our design one project inspiration. This is our goal, and this is what you can do with designs you might find online. Take a screenshot, put it into Photoshop, and you can kind of turn it on and off and use it as inspiration. Something I want to get across in this project is that the order in which you do things is very important. So I like to sort of think about what I'm going to do first. One is separate our subject from the background. We're going to add our cloud, we're going to add our text, and then stylize it with the lens flare and some glow to our text as well as behind our subject. Before we do any of our generative fill work, we need to make sure that the colors, the removing of backgrounds, the blurring of our clouds in the background is all done. And I'll show you why that's important in just a second. But to start out, let's go ahead and remove the background from our subject layer. Now, you might think that just clicking this remove background option is the best one. And for some people, that might work well. It creates this layer mask, which is good. We can fix this up a little bit, but I want to show you a more advanced way to select our subject and make that selection look good. We can start out for this image by just selecting our subject. If this doesn't work, you could go into our quick selection tool as we saw and paint over and create your selection. But instead of just copying this into a new layer, which we've done in the past, but this creates a destructive layer. We can't go back and edit it. We can't get any of that background information back. What we want to do, and I'm just undoing that with Command Z, is create, whenever we do this, we want to use a layer mask. And the way you do that with a selection of a layer is just by clicking the layer mask button here, and you can see now that we've created a layer mask for this selection. But still, we haven't done what I want to do, which is improve this selection. To do that, we actually have to select our quick selection tool with this layer selected. We then can go up to this option here, which is called Select and Mask, which will improve this selection. Now we have all of these options that will improve this selection. I'm going to go ahead with the zoom tool, zoom in so we can see. And the biggest area that I want to improve is her hair. So we can see if things like adding edge detection on, turning on smart radius, maybe feathering or contrast or shifting our edge in can help. And if I go ahead and do that with new layer, with layer mask output on, select OK, it's okay, but see, you can see her hair kind of like, it looks kind of funky, right? It doesn't really blend in. So what I'm going to do is undo that. I'm actually with my quick selection tool. I'm going to select more of her hair like this. So we're getting all of her hair in there. And then I'm going to go back to our select and mask. I'm going to go to our selection tool, and I'm going to choose refine hair. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And that does a decent job at improving her hair. And then I'm going to go into this refine edge brush tool, and I'm just going to paint over the edge of her hair. And what this is going to do is now it's going to do an advanced look at her hair. It's going to remove parts of that background that were selected, that gray sky, and it does a much better job. I've found with hair like this, you definitely want to have your edge detection on, maybe smoothing just a little bit, maybe a tiny bit of feathering depending on the resolution of your image, and then also shifting that edge in. If you have the edge shifted out, it's going to select parts of that sky, so maybe just decreasing that edge just a little bit can help. I'm going to boost that contrast just a little bit. And now if I click OK, it does a much better job. Now there are still some areas where I might want to get rid of that hair that's kind of floating in the sky now. But with this layer mask, we can select that layer mask now with a brush, B on the keyboard. And let's make this smaller. Remember, that's Control Option on a Mac, Command Alt on a PC, I believe. And then you can just erase the hair that's kind of in the sky. And then there's also this part of the background that got selected that I want to just get rid of as well. Whoops, undo that. Around her elbow, you can kind of go in here. There's this little part here that didn't get removed, and that's looking pretty good. Cool, so that's pretty good. Now, one main issue with this photo of her and the background is that the colors don't match. The sky is very blue, and the photo, which we can see here, is it's like a cloudy sunset. So the skin tones and all of that are much different than what they should be. So I want to sort of match those two things. First, I'm going to adjust the colors of the clouds, and one of the best ways to do this is by going up to Filter and editing this with a Camera Raw filter. This opens up this Camera Raw module, which is very similar to editing photos in something like Lightroom or any other photo editor. I'm not going to go through all of this right now. I have a whole section on this, but we can adjust the exposure, the color, and all of this in a very advanced way. And so for this background, really what I'm just going to do is I'm going to boost the exposure and the contrast just a little bit, bring down the whites because I want to still have, and the highlights, I want those details of those clouds. One sort of advanced thing you can do is go into Color Mixer, take this eyedropper, select the color that you want to adjust, and now this is just adjusting that blue, and I might just bring up the luminance maybe just a little bit, and bring down the saturation just so it's not as sort of a dark blue. Maybe make it a little bit more greenish by dropping that hue as well. And then click OK. And so now we have a background sky that looks good, but our subject still doesn't match it, right? So what I want to do is I want to do the same thing. Filter, Camera Raw filter to our subject. And we're going to make some adjustments. We are going to go down to color. I'm going to try to fix the white balance. So what I would do is I would take this eyedropper, try to find something that's like a white or a neutral gray, something like there, and that looks a lot better. Her skin starts to look a little green, so I'm going to sort of balance that back by bringing the tint over to the right. Let's see what happens if I drop the saturation just a little bit. It helps, but I don't want to lose all the skin tone, but it just wasn't looking natural or matching that blue sky. Something like this might look good. Let's go into our exposure. Let's just bring up our exposure of, especially in our shadows, so we can see more detail in her hair. Maybe bring back down the highlights and the whites and the blacks to bring back some more contrast. And with that, we can see what that looks like. And I think that looks a lot better, actually. So I feel like those colors match. We could play around with it. There's also other filters that you can use. One is an adjustment filter called Photo Filter. Here we have different warming filters and cooling filters. Now it's being applied to everything, but if we just click this button, it applies it just to our layer underneath it. And you can see if one of these looks better, you could adjust the strength. You know, you could go crazy with it. Maybe you want to get super creative, but maybe a little bit of that cooling filter might make it look a little bit better even. I'm going to go ahead and delete that though. I don't really need that. Now, a quick keyboard shortcut to note is the Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC. That's going to zoom in your project to the screen size, maximize it so that you can see it all full screen. All right, so that is looking pretty darn good. The reason I did that all before we added our floating on a cloud is because of this. I'm going to show you a thing really quick. If I go ahead and take my lasso tool and I take this area and I say sitting on a puffy cloud and generate that, it generates a nice cloud. But then what if I went in and said, oh, this sky is too dark, and I go add a brightness and contrast adjustment. What happens is, and I'm just going to push this to the extreme so you can see, the gen fill that was created here was based off of all of the layers of this image. And now that we've made an adjustment to the background, it doesn't match. So before you do any sort of Gen AI, you want to sort of finalize the look of your image. And one other thing we're going to do is we're going to blur out this background. So with this layer selected, we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to drop that down, something like this. And sometimes just adding blur to the background helps separate it from the layers in the front, which gives more depth and makes it look a little bit better. And now what I'm going to do is take my lasso. I want to make sure that I have my top layer selected because this is now going to create that puffy cloud based off of that top layer and everything beneath it. And now we can see our variations. We can see them here as well in this panel, and we can choose the one that we like best. Kind of like this one, but I want to see a few more options, so I'm going to choose Generate Similar, and we'll see if it creates anything better that I like. And yeah, that one's pretty good actually. I really like that one. All right, so now we have our puffy cloud, and the next things we're going to do with this are add our text and then our style. The other thing we didn't do, or is a little different, which isn't necessarily a problem, is the sizing of her. So see how she's bigger here? Now this is a problem because if I take her and I make her bigger, it's not matching that cloud we just created. And so, and again, we can't just take both of these layers and make them bigger because look at it's still not matching. Now we could do something where we try to take out the background of this puffy layer. So let me turn off this background. And then with this cloud layer selected, I'm going to use my quick selection tool, and I'm going to go around the edge of this cloud. Whoops, and see it accidentally selected that cloud as well. So I'm going to subtract that with the subtract selection tool, holding Alt down. What I actually want to do is I want to invert it. So I'm going to press this little button that inverts the selection to the cloud. I could have just selected the cloud in the first place. And now I'm going to go up to Select and Mask. I'm really going to feather out this selection. And let's go ahead and click OK. And now that removed that background edge from the Gen AI created image. And now we can do a decent job selecting these two layers now and moving them around and making them bigger, and it still somewhat works. This weird line thing going on, so I'm going to go into this layer, and it looks like there's this border that was selected probably when I feathered out the selection. I'm just going to erase that with my brush. All right, so that's how you can kind of get away with moving the cloud around afterwards, although it's not perfect. All right, so now let's add our text to this image. I'm going to move it down a little bit. So with my text tool, I'm going to type in here, and I'm going to choose, meditation. Now, some of my settings got changed, but you could always adjust the size of your font, the style with your character panel. So things I changed the font to Gil Sans. I changed the tracking to have some more space between this text. And one thing that we haven't seen is that while I move this layer around, you see these pink lines appear. This is telling me that I'm aligning this text to different layers. Some of these layers, these lines, they appear to tell me I'm aligning it to perhaps the cloud, the right side of that cloud. But if it's that one that goes through the full top bottom of this canvas, it means I'm center aligning it. And same thing, if I go down here, I can vertically align it as well. But really what I just want to center align it up at the top. And then what I want to do is I want to add the text beneath it that says class. The quickest way to create another layer is to go back to my move tool, then option click and drag while holding the shift key to keep it locked in place in that horizontal spot centered. And now I'm going to go in here and double click and type in class, go back to my move tool, and option scaling from the middle, or actually I guess just from the bottom I can do that. And I just want it to be the same size basically as our meditation text width-wise. And I want to put this text behind our subject. This might mean I need to move my subject and the cloud down. And that's looking pretty good. I have this extra layer here that was from the previous cloud before I made those adjustments to the selection of it, the edge, and I'm going to delete that now. All right, so we're getting pretty far along. How do we get to this? I think our text is a little bit big, so I'm going to select both text layers by clicking one and then shift clicking the other layer, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. When things are selected, you can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move them up and down. You could also hold the shift key to move it up and down by jumping just a little bit more in position than just the up and down arrow. Shift up and down. See how that works? I want to add a little bit of glow to the meditation text at the top. To do that, I can double click this text and add an outer glow. Now, these settings were preset from before, but you can change all of these. You can change the opacity of this. You could change the color. Maybe I want it to be a little bit more like a pink glow or warmer orangish glow, something like that. You can change the elements spread and size, which adjusts how that glow looks. Different styles of how you can add a glow to your text. Something like that. Now, we can also edit this later because we have this as a non-destructive layer style. And this might change when we add our next thing, which is our light leak. So if we take this light leak and we place this over our image, we're going to make this sort of like the size or at least a little bit bigger than our canvas. And I'm going to put this underneath our text. I want it to blend in. So similarly, as we saw in the crash course, I'm going to change this to, I think I like lighten actually for this. It preserves some of the color. But I'm going to add a layer mask to this, and with my brush, I'm going to erase the center of this, just as we saw before, so that our subject is standing out a little bit better. So we can see this on and off, and now that's looking pretty good. One of the last things we did with this design is I added a glow behind our subject. There's lots of ways to do this, but one really cool quick way is to add a shape. So you can do a custom curvature pen shape, or I'm just going to add this ellipse. I want it to be sort of the color I want the glow to be, so I might go ahead and take my color picker and choose sort of this beige peachish color up here. And now I'm going to create this sort of ellipse about the size of my subject and put it behind her. Then I'm going to go up to filter. I'm going to go to blur, Gaussian blur. Love the Gaussian blur. And it's going to ask me to convert this layer to a smart object, which basically makes this shape more into an image layer, which allows us to apply a blur to it. Now that looks pretty good. And I can still move it around. I can resize it if I want it to be bigger. Now, if it's not exactly the color I want, because I changed it to a smart object, I can't go back to my shape layer and change the color to something else. It's not going to change colors. But a quick way to change the color of this is to add a layer style and go to color overlay. And now I can add a color overlay of a different color, one that I think looks better for this glow. And basically this color overlay just applies color, a solid color, over whatever the object is, whatever the layer is. If I did this for my meditating woman, it would apply like that, see? But because I'm applying it to this blurred out ellipse, it basically does that. I can drop the opacity just a little bit, and that's looking pretty darn good. So it's a little bit different than our original one, the sizing, positioning, but in general, it's a pretty good match. So in this project, we learned a lot of new skills. We learned how to improve selections, especially regarding hair. We learned how important it is to know the order of how to create a project and design, especially if you're using the generative fill options. You want to do that after you've made all kinds of colors, adjustments, exposure adjustments to your image, and sizing adjustments. We learned how to add some layer style to text. We learned how to align things to each other and to the entire project. A little bit more about using layer masks and how to add this cool, quick glow behind our subject. Pretty cool stuff. All right, I hope you enjoyed this project. I would love to see your work. So if you're recreating this one on your own, or if you're creating something else using these skills, please share it to the course. Please share it on social media. I'm at Phil Ebener or at Video School. That's my brand. You can find handles to tag me on most social platforms. So please do that. Let me know if you are enjoying this course, if you're enjoying what you're learning. I know it's quick. It's a crash course. And if you want to take things a little bit slower, we have the full course for you. But for now, hopefully you're feeling stoked about being able to do so much in such a short amount of time. In the next project, we're going to do this one. Now, this one might look a little bit more boring, but there's some really cool stuff going on, including how to use frames, which is another very important skill in Photoshop. So I'll see you in that next project coming up next.